In this box right here is the closest thing I've ever experienced to perfection in an IEM. Let's talk about it. Now keep in mind I said closest thing. Nothing is perfect, but this really, my iPod is on top. Yeah, that's the perfection. No, it's this. This is the High Senior Mega5 EST. Now nothing is perfect, but this is the closest thing for me. The owner of this IEM sent it around on a review tour, and when it got to me, I asked him if I could buy it. And he said yes. Let's talk about build and comfort a little bit, then let's get into sound. This is a pretty small and pretty light IEM. It's a resin housing that is not small, but also not huge. 5.37 millimeter nozzle, which is not massive, but also not as tiny as like an IE600. I use these pretty thin tips on it if you want to check these out. This is what they are. I like these because they actually allow IEMs like this to fit comfortably in my ear. On most other metrics, this is a pretty small to medium-sized IEM. It's nowhere near as big as things like the Unique Melody Mest, and as a result of that, comfort for me has not been an issue. My biggest complaint about these has to be the retention mechanism for the 2-pin cable. And by that, I mean the lack of a retention mechanism for the 2-pin cable. It's a 2-pin that just plugs straight in right here. As I'm listening, this has a tendency to slip out just a hair like that. While not massively problematic, this will put some strain on the connector over time. I would have preferred to see some sort of a collar or an indent for a square retention mechanism on these, just to make that 2-pin a little more durable. Aside from that, they fit comfortably in my ears, and the cable is pretty nice. I like the color, it matches the Y-split, and this terminates in a 4.4 millimeter connection. Now I'm using an adapter with that because I primarily use these with, you got it, my iPod. If you saw me at Can Jam, you saw me walking around probably with these two things. I could use this with a nicer DAP or a DAC amp, but I like my iPod quite a bit. There's only so much you can say about the build of an IEM, so let's talk about sound quality. Subjective first, then frequency response. Now, when I say this is perfect, I mean perfect for my ears. Your brain expects a certain sound at your eardrum. It's calibrated for it, so to speak. And when you are bypassing all of this on the outside of your ear, well, your brain still expects the sound of it. And since all of us have different ear shapes, IEMs sound dramatically different from person to person. You also have something called a length mode. Basically, when you put an IEM in your ear, you're creating a small room with a speaker in it, and the length of that room creates a mode at a certain frequency. This is the only IEM I've ever put in my ears where I've not heard a length mode. It just sounds completely dead on. The bass is very deep, very impactful, very powerful. The mid-range is full and rich with a little bit of warmth. Vocals are smooth, not overly present, but also not recessed by any means. They just sound like they're exactly where they should be. And the treble is very present, but not bright. It sounds sifty and airy, but also very smooth, sweet, and buttery. I feel as though there is absolutely nothing I'm missing from the mix, and I feel like there are plenty of things I hear in this that I miss on a lot of headphones. And I mean a lot of headphones, things that I would only hear on certain tracks when I was listening to the HE1, a headphone that I had the privilege of having at home for a little over half a year. And the Mega5 EST is the only thing that has ever done quite the same thing as HE1. The next closest thing behind that is probably like the Bravura or the Aperio for me. This is a between $500 and $600 IEM, and we're comparing it to a piece of equipment that is over $50,000. That to me is mind-blowing, and that's just listening off of an iPod or off of an Atom, or even off the headphone jack on my MacBook Pro. It is simply excellent across the board. And to me, that degree of balance is something that I've looked for so long. Something that works this well in my ears, that doesn't feel like it has any compromises in the sound, or where I feel like I'm not having to look past a specific fault. It's just all there, all exactly how I wish it was and how I envision it in my head when I think about that perfect sounding IEM. Between that and some decent isolation, well, I'm getting an experience that sounds very high fidelity. A low noise floor, a lot of linearity, and it's like the curtain is lifted on every song that I've listened to a million times before. I know you guys have heard me complain about a lot of products in the past, and there are some that I've liked quite a bit, But there's nothing that I've liked as much as this. I have never been so fast to buy something, and now I've been listening to it for several months straight. The honeymoon phase still hasn't stopped. Again, I had this before CanJam New York City, and it still feels like I'm in the honeymoon phase with this IEM. Usually for me, that wears off in about 3 to 5 days. But every time I put these in my ear, I feel like I'm listening to a lot of my music for the first time. That, to me, is an incredible experience that is beyond monetary value and is irreplaceable. It is so good that a lot of times now when I really want to listen to every detail in my music, I sit down and use these instead of any of my headphones. And I'm a headphone reviewer. I've got a wall of headphones. My closets are full of headphones. I've got headphones everywhere and I love them, but these really take it to the next level. I do think part of it is due to the fact these have electrostatic drivers in them. They're not all electrostat, 2 of them are electrostat. The other 3 drivers is a dynamic and 2 balanced armatures. But I cannot emphasize enough, if you have hearing that is similar to mine, if you have ears with a profile similar to mine, you need to try these. This has been an absolute eye-opening experience, and I really don't think that anything else is going to replace these for a long time for me. And what's even more impressive is that they're able to achieve this sound with no DSP at all. This is just a straight-through analog IEM. And this is a frequency response that I struggle to achieve on other IEMs, even with DSP. And now that you guys have listened to me gush for a while, let's talk about objective sound and frequency response. Now, Listener took these measurements. You can also check out his article if you want, the link in the video description. He's one of our writers, he does a really good job. He's actually the person that suggested I try these to begin with. Through the lows, this is on the higher end of the average listener preference bounds. These are strong in the bass, not overwhelming, but definitely strong. You can see a bit more warmth here in the lower mid-range. We pull down slightly as we approach the mids around 500-600 hertz, rise up just a hair back to the center of the average listener preference range, right where our vocals sit. We dip back down as we approach the peak of ear gain between 2.5 and 3 kilohertz. This is probably why vocals sound a little bit smoother. We pretty much land right on the line around 4 kilohertz, and from there up we go up and down a little bit within the range without ever falling off too hard. The tallest peak on these is around 7-ish kilohertz, and from there it seems relatively calm in the upper treble. This is a flavored frequency response. It's definitely not dead on flat, dead on neutral, but it is pretty dang close also. And this is within a tolerance that this very well could just be matching up to my personal HRTF. Something else worth noting is how close Mega5 EST measures to things like Dusk. A number of similarities. Dusk has been a pretty well-received IEM, though it does take DSP to achieve this very similar tuning. I have to give credit. This thing looks fantastic and I'd love to try it. Given how much I like Mega5 EST, I would probably also really like Dusk. But there is something really nice about being able to use an IEM that doesn't need any DSP to achieve this tuning. It's one less piece of electronics I have to worry about because whatever I plug these into, it's always going to sound the same. I mean, unless it has like a crazy high impedance output or something weird like that. Anything reasonable that I plug these into is going to sound the same. So an iPod or a laptop or a desktop DAC amp or anything like that. For me, the Mega5 EST absolutely knocks it out of the park. I think this may be the most positive review that I've ever given to a product, and I think that these absolutely deserve it. They've reignited a sort of wonder in me for audio that I haven't been able to find in a lot of products. And if you have the opportunity to listen to a set, I highly encourage you to do so. This is going to be a bit of a hot take, but I tried these and the Subtonic Storm side by side, and I think that the Mega5 EST is a much better version of the Subtonic Storm for a very small fraction of the price, at least by comparison. Anyway, I could gush all day about these, but I want to go listen to them instead, so let's get this video wrapped up. Leave a like down below if you think I'm a crazy person, or if you liked the video, either way. I mean, I guess leave a comment if you want differentiating which is which. I mean, you have to be a little bit crazy like me to be this deep into this hobby, right? But it's fun. It's fun, right? Anyway, leave a comment down there letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can hit the Discord or the forum, both of them will link in the video description. And as always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until next one, guys. Peace.